Good morning. Why should you care about a bird omen? That's the topic of today. And here today, joining me, is my friend Beans, the Highland Cattle. Say hi to Beans, everyone. Beans says hi. So I was thinking about the bird omens and thinking about how not everybody knows what the heck to do with that. And I don't know, I mean, you can just watch it and be like, oh, birds, I love birds. That's cool. She saw a house sparrow. Love crows. You know, that's enough. If that's all you want from the bird omens. But they are an omen. And what does that mean? And so I thought, well, heck, I'm going to just explain what I mean by it. So there's this word that I kind of like, that I use loosely about some of the things that I do. It's an old-timey, okay, it's like ancient Greek or something, old-timey. It's like very old-timey. Augury. You may have heard of an augur. Not like the thing that is in a tractor that'll mangle your extremities. But all right, this is getting weird. All right, augury. They're people who take omens from the natural world and interpret them, and a lot of times they would be employed by, you know, the king or the leader, the chieftain, whatever, you know, throughout our history, when we as humans actually had to rely on the natural world day to day. Like if we didn't know what was happening in the natural world, we were going to die. We were going to starve to death. Our crops wouldn't do well. And so the people who could read nature were very valuable. They were valuable people because they could tell you, don't plant the crops yet. You know, I noticed that this bird is behaving in this way, or the plants are behaving in this way, or the winds are coming from this, or whatever, you know, whatever it was, wherever they were, their bioregion, that's a popular word these days, bioregion. But wherever they were, they could use their knowledge of how nature behaves to say, well, you know, what we should do. Should we plant the crops now? Should we wait 2 weeks? Should we do, you know, whatever. And a lot of it, you know, we hear things like that and we think, oh, it's like superstition, or it's old wives' tales sort of things. Like the most recent picture I posted, where I talked about that old phrase, red sky in the morning, sailors take warning. I always heard sailors, but my girlfriend, who's lived in Colorado her whole life, there's not a lot of sailors in Colorado, and so she always heard shepherds. Shepherds take warning. And I thought, well, that's kind of funny. Are there very many shepherds either? Maybe maybe there's more than I think. So, but that, because of the understanding of, if the sky was red in the morning, you could kind of count on there being a storm. And of course, it's not an exact science. It's intuitive. It's based off of patterns. And sometimes those things don't quite happen the way that we want, you know, that we thought that they were going to happen, or the way that it was read. You know, maybe there won't be a storm today. But I will say it's very windy right now. It's the reason I'm inside and not outside. I wanted to go outside to do this, but it's too windy and I'll get too cold, and then the audio will be terrible. So anyway, back to why you care about the bird omen and how you can engage in the bird omen. And you, as a person, you could Google search the spiritual symbolism of the red-winged blackbird if you want. That's a perfectly valid way to sort of build your own symbolic understanding of things. But that's basically that's what I do, is what I should say. You know, if you want to understand the messages that the natural world is giving you, you first have to establish a base of symbols for yourself. And The important thing to remember about when you're building a catalog of symbols is that it's entirely up to you. It's so up to you. It's super not, there's thousands of years worth of resources that could help you to build this symbolism library that I would totally recommend doing your own research into what other people have established. What is the crows and ravens, eagles, hawks, these very like major birds are rich with established symbolism that makes a lot of sense. It makes sense. And so that's a great starting point. But you as a human being also have a vast history, a lifetime of symbolic representations that you work on in your day all the time. I mean, you see a Starbucks logo and you go, oh, I know I can go get coffee there. I mean, that is a symbolic thing. So you as a human, you can establish your own meanings on this. And what's important in this is not, like I said, it's not what other people's meanings are, but if you don't have your own established system yet, it's so helpful to look up, like, what do other people think about this? What have spiritual and even scientific understandings been of this animal, this bird, this plant? You can do this not just with birds, with anything. So yeah, I personally have spent a long time, a lot of my life, just observing nature and sitting and observing and not trying not to judge what it is that I'm seeing, but trying to understand what's happening on, face value, like just observing what's happening. And a lot of times that kind of stuff will give you insight. And so if you know what your library of symbols is, if you have a library of symbols that you have established for yourself, or if you're exploring that, then you can really extrapolate all of that to your whole life. It doesn't have to just be nature. Something could happen to you in the grocery store, and that would be a sign, if you will. And so why do you care about a sign? Like, what are you, some kind of weird spiritual hermit? No, that's me. A sign. What do you need a sign for? Well, sometimes you're going through life and you're like, oh my God, this thing is happening, and I don't know what to do about it. Or I need some kind of reassurance that I've made the right decision. Well, if you're sitting there and you're like, I just made a decision, I don't know if it was the right one. It feels like the right one, but I'm scared. I'm scared that I made the wrong decision. And you're sitting there and you're out in nature and you're thinking about this and you're thinking about all the stuff, and then a bald eagle flies over. Out of the blue. You never see bald eagles. You're not at like some kind of an eagle sanctuary or something. You're just out in the woods in your neighborhood park, and a bald eagle flies over. Well, I'm telling you, that sounds like a good omen, that maybe you made the right choice. Eagles, hawks, because of where they fly, they're up in the high skies. They're up there with their eagle vision. They're seeing the whole picture, and they are clear on what's happening. They have clarity of vision. And so if an eagle, that's a good indication that spiritually you can feel reassured that you've made the right decision, just as an example of a way that you could use this in your life. Or let's say you are like a spiritual weirdo and you already sort of, you do tarot or whatever, and you already sort of live your life based off of synchronicities and things like this, little nudges from your spirit team or from the universe or God or whoever you talk to. Well, this is just another, it's sort of like you're walking around in your own deck of tarot cards, because everything could give you a symbol. Anything could be a symbol. And so it's sort of just accepting that you, as a spiritual, psychological being, somebody with a brain and pattern recognition, that you are capable of determining what these symbols mean in your own life. That the answers to that are all inside of you and your understanding. And it can be kind of messy. And also, the other thing is, nature is also just doing stuff. Like sometimes a hawk is swooping around because it's hungry, and so there are times when nature is just behaving. It's doing what it does. And that doesn't mean that every time you see a hawk that's that meaning. But if for some reason you are dealing with something, some spiritual turmoil or a question, or you're dealing with some kind of like decision you have to make, and you're really grappling with this, or you're thinking about you're thinking about past loved ones who are no longer with us. That is a really powerful way to connect with them through nature. So like birds, if your grandpa's favorite bird was the blue jay, and you're thinking about your grandpa, and you're starting a business that has to do with something your grandpa knew a lot about, and you see a blue jay in the process of this, well, heck, that is clearly your grandpa is coming to say that he approves and that you should go for it. That's an example of something like that, where like, and a lot of people are like, oh, a butterfly reminds me of my mom. It's the same thing. But you can get real specific with it. Yeah. So the bird omens, for me, what you can do with them interactively is they can reflect a synchronicity that you're already experiencing. Maybe you've seen crows all day, or all week you've been seeing crows, and you've particularly noticed them for some reason. And then I come on and I'm like, crows. It's a crow. The bird of the day is a crow. And you're like, oh, I knew it. It's like just another little pinpoint of like synchronicity. And spirit is tricksy. Spirit loves a joke. That's something that I think people don't always acknowledge in spiritual spaces, is that when you really start working with spirit, unless you're like, even if you're really serious, like a really serious, especially if you're a really serious person, like, spirit is not that serious. Spirit's out there making jokes. Spirit's out there like pulling pranks on us and then laughing about it. Not in a mean way, in like a cosmic joke kind of way. And so spirit will do these things that will put you in a situation that will force you to deal with your BS. And so that's one thing to consider when you start living your life following these signs, is sometimes a sign is going to lead you right into a trigger that then you're going to have to deal with, which is healing and great. And if you deal with that trigger reasonably, then that's progress. That's healing. It's good. But it's sometimes not, it's like a not as fun aspect of it. So like, it's not that when you start following these signs and synchronicities, suddenly your life is good. Like, that's what people are always saying on these. A lot of people are like, oh yeah, just do this and your life will improve immensely. You'll get everything you want. Well, okay, maybe that's true. But before you can get everything you want, there's a lot of stuff probably that you have to deal with before you can actually do that. And that's called shadow work. And we're not getting into that right now, but that's something to think about. Is that not all signs are taking you to a place of rainbows and butterflies. sometimes you have to make a detour through a dark forest, and spirit is helping you get there, but the dark forest is still a necessary part of the process. If you have shadow things to work on, you can't avoid that part. And so spirit is, these signs will help lead you through that forest of darkness that you must go through if you have shadow aspects that are unintegrated. You know what I mean? So that's something to be very aware of, and something I don't hear. Like, I never heard people, nobody ever warned me that the spiritual path would be a harrowing adventure into my traumas so that I could then release their control over me and my actions, which is great. And now that I have done that, I am so grateful. But let me tell you, it was not easy. It was a giant pain. It was horrible sometimes, you know, like, it was painful. And so that's, you know, that's something that I think a person needs to keep in mind, is that this spiritual, if you're really going all in on the spiritual path and you have like a bunch of like BS, a bunch of like dumb ways of thinking that come from trauma, you have to work on that. Like, you have to deal with it. You have to look at it, and you have to love yourself about it. You have to forgive yourself. Not to mention, you know, you have to let go of the animosity you feel towards the people who did you wrong. And so all of that stuff is important to consider, if you ask me. So beware the spiritual path. It is harrowing, or it can be harrowing. So that's I think that's about all I have to say on this topic. I'll probably talk more about augury and reading the signs in nature, if that's something y'all want to hear about. And yeah, so I mean, to wrap it up, what do you do with the bird omen? Whatever you want. Whatever you glean from a bird omen is significant in some way. Whether that is to force you to deal with the stuff you don't want to look at, or, you know, as what does happen to me often, is it leads you in, it does lead you into what you want, like sometimes what you didn't know that you wanted, or what you didn't realize that you were allowed to want. So it's not I think this is what they mean by it's a spiral path, you know, like, it's not just like, oh, well, we're spiritual and everything's hunky-dory. It's like you go around, and then you come back around, and then you come back around, but you're slowly changing as a person. And so when you get to a part that looks similar to where you've already been, the way that you react to that trigger or that environment or whatever it was, the way that you respond is different. And that's important. That's the only thing you can change, really, is how you react to outside circumstances. That's the only thing that you ultimately have control over. Everything else in the world is, so, you know, it's somehow, it's influenced by things that you cannot control. There's many things that you as a person cannot control in this world, even though as a wizard reality creator, sometimes we like to blast in and really like try and change things and try and push through sometimes, because we say, oh, well, God told me this, or Spirit is taking me in this direction, or Spirit has told me this is the way to go. Well, Spirit didn't tell you that it would be just easy, and it can be, but not until you accept that it's easy. And if you're living in a situation where it is not easy, then trying to force yourself to just believe that it's easy doesn't work. It doesn't work because inside you don't feel that way. That's the shadow work. That's where the shadow work comes in. And now we've gotten so far off the topic of augury. So I'm gonna leave it here. I'm gonna leave it here. The bird omen of the day. I saw many birds and I heard them. They are very active. They're very active today. This morning. I mean, they're active a lot of days. But this morning they just felt there was a lot. I saw a blue jay. I heard crows. I didn't see any crows yet, but I definitely heard them. I heard a tui, and they make a funny sound. It's kind of like ee, ee, ee. I don't know if that actually sounds like a tui, but it's my best attempt. So I heard one of those guys. Red-winged black, did I mention red-winged blackbird? I saw one out in the field that I'm sitting by. A flicker, I saw a flicker. Yeah, lots of birds today. Oh, ducks, I saw 3 ducks. So the number 3 might be significant. Ducks might be significant. The color orange might be significant. I'm drinking out of my problematic Pocahontas mug. And okay, the mug it's just that Pocahontas is not, it's not an accurate representation of anything in the Disney movie of Pocahontas. But I will tell you that it's one of my favorite movies as a kid anyway. And the song, The Colors of the Wind, I think that really, like, that was significant for me as a child. You know, that song, even though it comes from, you know, like, there's a lot to be said about, I mean, Native people in film across the board has been a little bit over history. It has not been great. Indigenous representation in media, particularly. Anyway, we don't have to get into that. But what I am saying is that there are things that are problematic in this world, but nothing doesn't have some kind of value on some level. And so this is a slippery slope that, you know, there's a lot more to explain to what I mean by this. But anyway, what I'm saying is that, like, I, as a person, I've done a lot of studying of film and, like, representation in film and media and things like that. And so I can hold this truth that, for example, the cartoon movie Pocahontas has a lot of problematic elements, but at the same time, I can accept the fact that movie taught me how to connect to nature at a young age. That movie instilled in me values about the value of nature, and not from like an extractive point of view, but from a relational point of view. So, you know, we got all this propaganda, we got all this, like, stuff that is trying to program us with how things are and how things should be. And all of that stuff is, who needs it? We don't need to be told any of that kind of thing. But the kind of funny paradox is that a lot of these things have, like, these kernels in them that do change things for the positive. And so I really value, in a lot of ways, the lessons that, as a kid, that this movie had me thinking about. about how, you know, everything has a life and a spirit and a name. Like, that is so, that's my spiritual basis. Like, that's what I believe. So anyway, so my whole point, Pocahontas might be significant. Problematic film might be cartoons. The color orange, all those birds I mentioned might be significant. Wind, the storm. All right. I think that's all I have for you today. So thanks for hanging out with us, Beans, my lovely co-host, Beans. And we'll see you all next time. Thanks for watching.